Hello, welcome back to another video. My name is Gemma and today is a very exciting day. So if you are unaware, it is very soon, in 3 weeks, going to be Bookish Christmas, also known as the Women's Prize Longlist announcement. And there's already some buzz, there's already some longlist predictions out there, and today I'm going to chuck mine into the melting pot. So I have 16 predictions for you. However, I also have a wee announcement. Are you ready for this? So me and the lovely Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf and Charlie from Charlie Brooke Reads, we were chatting Women's Prize like back in the summer, like quite some time ago, and we were like, why does no one do anything like around the Women's Prize? We're like, today, but we're gonna. So we decided that we were going to do a sort of read along come support group style situation for the entirety of the Women's Prize, from the long list announcement to the winner announcement, and thus this was born. And when we were discussing it, we said we wanted to have sort of like reading sprints every week for people to sort of catch up on their Women's Prize reading and have an opportunity to chat about what they'd read, what they're going to read, what they're not going to read, what they've DNF'd, what they didn't like, and what they think is going to happen in the coming weeks and months. However, Alice very, very intuitively mentioned that none of us are sprinty kind of readers. If you saw any of the reading sprints that Alice and I were a part of in January, you'll know we just read at a very ploddy pace, and so does Charlie. So we decided we were going to call it the Women's Prize Plodalong 2023. And so from the 7th of March, when the long list is announced, right through till the 14th of June, when the winner is announced, we will be holding weekly plods, which is basically a couple of hours of live show where we talk Women's Prize, we do some reading, and we'll have some special guests on there too. They will obviously be guests that are invested in the Women's Prize. They don't know who they are yet because we haven't asked them, but they will be cajoled into attending those reading plods as members of the Women's Prize Love Society. I just made that up, but you know where I'm going with this. So we will be kicking this exciting event off on the 7th of March when the long list is announced by having a live reaction in the evening of the on the evening of the 7th. Alice, Charlie, and myself. That will be over on Alice's channel. So I'm sure you all are. If you're not subscribed, Alice and Charlie's details are linked below. And basically just come along. We'll talk about what's been longlisted, whether we got any of our predictions right. I actually don't know what the other two girls have predicted, so I don't know where we overlap or where we don't. But it'll be a fun little contest to see who got the most right. Let's be honest, it's probably going to be me. But, you know, don't want to count me chickens. So once we've done that, the weekly lives will start. We will also do a live around the shortlist announcement and around the winner announcement. More details on dates to follow. We will share on community tabs and that sort of thing. So there should be plenty of opportunity for you to see when stuff is happening. And if you're curious and you've missed an update, then just comment on any of our videos throughout that period and we will give you an update. So last year when I did this, I got 4 out of 16. 4. So we're gonna aim for 6 this year. We're gonna aim for 6. Let's see how that goes. So let's talk about the 16 books that I'm predicting for the 2023 Women's Prize. First up, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Is anyone surprised to see this on my list? So Demon Copperhead is at its heart a coming of age story set in the South Appalachian Mountains. A young boy with copper hair is navigating his home situation where he is born to a young teenage mother. The father is absent and he is trying to make his way in the world pretty much on his own ingenuity. This book is very much based on Charles Dickens's David Copperfield, and interrogates the same overarching theme of poverty and what that does to a child. So, yes, I obviously already own this one, so I'm really hoping it comes up. It is a bit chunky, but I love Barbara Kingsolver, so this is my first prediction. She has also won the Women's Prize before. My next prediction is another one that I already own but haven't read. I haven't read any of these. This is just based off of the synopsis and what I know about the authors. But the next one that I'm predicting is Maggie O'Farrell. And I just told you a lie. I have read two of them, but we'll get to those in a bit. The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. And this is a reimagining of the life of Lucrezia Medici in the Italian Renaissance, when she sort of has to step into her sister's shoes when her sister dies on the eve of her wedding, and she marries the same duke that her sister was supposed to marry, and I don't think he's a very nice man. So this has had rave reviews to date. Obviously, O'Farrell won with Hamlet a couple of years ago, and so I think she's pretty much a shoo-in to be longlisted. And now that I've said that, I've jinxed it. Apologies. The next one I am predicting is one that I have read, and that is Nightcrawling by Layla Motley. I adored this book. I read it for the Booker Prize last year. It was longlisted, not shortlisted. That was a travesty. But Layla Motley is a very talented young author. She wrote this, I think, when she was she like 17 or 19? She was at the age where I was pretty much constantly inebriated at university, I think. And this was phenomenal. For lovers of Jessamine Ward, this really takes a deep dive into what it is like to grow up poor and black in America and the risks that you have to take, particularly when you do not have a stable family home. And it was outstanding. Outstanding. And I really want to see it on the Women's Prize long list because I think it is Women's Prize fodder. I do have a solo review for this. I'll link it below. It'd be lovely if you checked it out. Next up, we have another big hitter, and that is Horse by Geraldine Brooks. This sounds so interesting. It's split over 3 timelines, which are linked by 3 sort of objects. There is an old painting, a skeleton, and a prize-winning racehorse. And it sets the scene over 1850, 1945, and modern day, or 2019, modern enough. And it's how these 3 objects come together and these 3 timelines come together around this theme of this racehorse, but really is a sweeping historical epic saga of the American history from the inception of the Civil War right up until today. Defo sounds like a Gemma book. I will be reading this regardless of whether it is longlisted. Okay, so before I go on to the next one, I think those first 4 are no surprise to anyone. I have tried to mix in a selection of common ones that I think a lot of people would predict and less common ones that people are like, what? So this is one of those. Though I think I did see this on a prediction video recently, but They're Going to Love You by Meg Howry. So this is a split timeline. Again, we have one timeline set in America in the AIDS epidemic and a modern day timeline as well, also set in America, I think New York. And we are following the main protagonist of a young girl who wants to follow in her mother's footsteps and be a professional ballerina. Now, I've put this on for a couple of reasons, but probably the main one is because I find ballet fascinating and like the lives of ballerinas fascinating because it is such an intense sport and like almost to the point of unhealthy toxicness within the dancing sort of sphere. So I think this could be really, really dark, and that's why I put it on the list. Next up, we have one that the lovely Sarah from Freshly Read Books put on my radar a little while ago, and I've been meaning to get to it ever since. And to be honest, just the title, I think, means that it should be longlisted for at least one award, let's say the Women's Prize. And that is Lungfish by Megan Gillis. Lungfish. But the premise is super interesting. It's about a family who are sort of squatting on an abandoned island because their father has used up all the money on drugs and is now detoxing on this abandoned island. And I think the main protagonist is the mother, and it's about her journey trying to support her husband through detox while raising a daughter on an abandoned island with no food and no money. And yeah, and sort of taking what the island gives her and what she sort of learns through that journey. So I expect there will be dark bits. It's obviously big on the themes of family, marriage, motherhood, addiction. And so I definitely want to read that. And Sarah said it was really good. So can't argue with that. Next up is one I haven't seen. I don't think anyone else predict, and I don't think it's out until March. So this is a bit of a shot in the dark, but it sounded amazing. And that's called River Sing Me Home by Eleanor Shriver, which is about a mother in sort of post-colonial times who is journeying across the Caribbean looking for her child who was abducted during slavery. And I think, again, another hard hitter and possibly a tear jerker. So I really love Caribbean fiction, and I know that it has featured in the last 2 Women's Prize long lists, short lists. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see another Caribbean story on the list, and I hope it's this one. Into the realms of historical fiction, we have Joan by Catherine J. Chen. This is getting rave reviews. It's obviously sort of out and out historical fiction looking at a reimagined life of Joan of Arc. And I don't really know much more than that. I don't really want to know much more going in. I think I know like the rough premise around Joan of Arc, you know, young girl raised, fought in France, and then I won't spoil the end for you if you don't know. Didn't work out brilliantly. But I really, really would like to see this on the list because I really, really want to read it. As with all of these books, to be fair. The next one on the list I've put on because it reminds me a little bit in premise of Sorrow and Bliss, which was a huge success for the Women's Prize last year. So again, it wouldn't surprise me to see them put a similar type of book on the list. And I've gone for Really Good Actually by Monica Hazy. Not sure how to pronounce that. And this is a debut novel looking at a woman sort of in the year following her divorce after a relatively short marriage and her basically trying to get her shit together. So yeah, I think it's going to be one of those darkly comedic books, very much like Sorrow and Bliss, looking at mental health and what a woman does to sort of pretend that she is okay when she's not. So yeah, intrigued. Also love this cover. Next, I have gone for something with a bit more magical realism possibly in it, and that is The Furrows by Namwali Sapel, who won an award for her debut novel The Drift. And this one is following a young 12-year-old girl who is sort of left alone to look after her younger brother. An accident happens and he disappears forever. And it's about what grief is, what absence in a home does to a family, the cleaving apart of her family after those events, and the different ways that her parents cope with the loss of their youngest child. As I said, I think there are magical elements in this. I'm not entirely sure how it all weaves in, but it sounds amazing. And I've been meaning to read The Old Drift for a while as well. So yeah, it'd be really good to get to some of this author's work. Next up, an author that I don't think has been longlisted for the Women's Prize before, but it's definitely a very prolific author, and that is Kate Atkinson with her new novel Shrines of Gaiety, which was actually very kindly gifted to me by Alice at Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. So it would be nice for me to read a gift that she got me, like within the year that she got it for me. And this one, we are going to the Roaring Twenties, just after the Great War, and we're following a woman who is sort of taking a leadership role within the dark underbelly of Soho, amid the nightclubs and the prostitution and the drugs. And she has 6 children and she has high ambitions for them. And that is all I know. But what a setting, what a setup to a novel. Let's see what Kate Atkinson can do with this. Okay, so the next one is another one that I read but didn't love, and that is The Book of Goose by Inyan Lee. I did a whole review on this. I did not love this. This was very much a focused, microscopic look at the friendship between two girls, what obsession is, what darkness is, how friendships are so transient. And yeah, it wasn't for me, but I would say this really is for lovers of Elena Ferrante. And so I do think it's very good for the Women's Prize. I think it will be the kind of thing they really enjoy. Um, it just wasn't for me, but I am expecting that this may well be in with a good shot on the Women's Prize this year. Okay, next is another shot in the dark, and we have Darling by Indian Night. And this sort of the setup of this gives me I Capture the Castle vibes. So you have a young girl growing up in the Norfolk countryside in an old farmhouse. Her family are quite eccentric, and she is like trying to break free from that. And then she goes to London and she becomes a model and marries a UKIP leader. And I think from there it turns a bit dark. It's about the dark side of love, what romance is, what betrayal is, and it all goes a bit darker from that point. So I'm not entirely sure about this one, but it intrigues me and I think it could have potential. And we all know how the Women's Prize likes to throw in a random. So this is my real random guess. Next up, we have one that I could not ignore. Scott from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, I believe, put this on his prediction list, and he's been raving about it for a while. And that is The Immortal King Rayo by Vahini Vara. This, again, is a debut novel. I have put quite a few debuts on here because I know the Women's Prize love a debut. And this sounds fabulous because it is a mix of literary fiction and speculative fiction. It's also a mix of historical fiction and dystopian fiction. I mean, how often do you see those two mentioned in the same sentence? Where we follow a young boy in India in the 1950s who is the son of a coconut farmer, and he grows up to become this massive tech CEO and then sort of like king of the world. Um, when the world is sort of governed by one political entity, he takes charge of that. So it's about that journey. I think there is also quite a lot of magical stuff in here to do with memory, and I I'll be honest, I didn't quite understand it from the synopsis, but tickle me intrigued. The penultimate book I am adding to the list is Ithaca by Claire North. Oh, shiny, shiny. I don't really think I need to go into the premise of this. It is about Ithaca. So Penelope's story, who from Greek myth is the wife of Odysseus, who waits 20 years for him to return because he can't get his ass into gear. And this is sort of an all-female retelling of that story. Sort of, I'm thinking similarly to like Madeline Miller and Natalie Haynes. So I'm interested to see what Claire North's voice adds to this genre. But we have seen Greek myth on the list before, and I would quite like to see it again. So I'm going to go for this one because I didn't particularly like Stone Blind. And then the last one on the list is another debut. We have Things They Lost by Okwiri Odur. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it because I'm not sure I can read my own handwriting. But this is set in a fictional town in Kenya, and we're following 4 generations of women who are haunted by a curse. And this novel is very, very heavily steeped in Kenyan folklore and myth, which is something that I don't know a huge amount about, but want to. I think African folklore and myth is something that I want more in my reading life, and so I would really, really, really like to see this book on the list. And that is 16. That is 16. So as I said, I'd really like to get 5 or 6 of these right. We will see. Maybe if I slip the judges a 20, it's probably not going to work, is it? But what can you do? But yes, I would love to know if you're predicting any of the same books as me, if you are interested in any of these books, and if you're going to join us for the Women's Prize Plod Along, we would love to have you. As I said, more details will come on the 7th when we do our long list reaction. Also, just a little nugget at the end. Next year, the Women's Prize look like they're going to do a non-fiction award. Saw that in the news this week. So there's a little nugget of information for you. But yeah, those are all the books I'm predicting. If you're interested in seeing my Nightcrawling review or my Book of Goose review, I will leave those there. And I will see you all very soon with another one. Bye, guys.